If you've ever been around the consumer space, whether it's like consumer apps or consumer social or consumer products like e-commerce or anything like that, you probably have heard of the term UGC. UGC is user generated content and it's predominantly done by creators that you pay to talk about your brand or your product in videos on TikTok and Instagram or wherever. If that's the case, you might also be wondering how UGC can help you and your product. I'll tell you how it helped us. So we built, scaled, and sold a mobile app, and it was all thanks to UGC that we were able to get it to a point where we had enough users to sell it, and it was making money, it was profitable, all that. So UGC is really a powerful tool that you can use to market your app, but you have to really understand what UGC is. And I realize that in a lot of other videos I've made, I've spoken about UGC, but I've never spoken about UGC specifically, right? I've mentioned UGC, but now I really want to take a deep dive into what UGC is, how it can be effective for you, and how it's most effectively used when marketing a tool. So now I really want to take a deep dive into what UGC is, how UGC is most effectively used, and how UGC can be used to market your platform, your product, whatever. So first off, we have to understand what UGC is practically, right? So UGC is videos about your product. And that can be varying depending on what the product is, right? Like if you sell hand soap, the product videos regarding hand soap are going to be very different than product videos about a mobile app. So, the first thing when you are trying to see if UGC can work for your product is you have to understand, is there UGC content that can be made about your product, right? Is your product something that can have videos made about? More often than not, yes, there is, but you have to be very creative sometimes with how you're going to incorporate it, right? So, what I see a lot of mobile apps do, for an example, is their main features might not necessarily make for great videos, but they have offshoots of that they film around. So, like, it might not even be something that their app necessarily does, but they talk about it in relation to their app, and that drives traffic. There's also platform specific UGC. So there are some pieces of UGC content that just work better on some platforms versus others, right? Like, for an example, content on Instagram, Reels, right? Reels do very, very well, but Reels and TikToks, if you look at them, they're very different. TikToks posted on Instagram usually do well, but Instagram Reels, so content made for Instagram Reels specifically, is usually higher editing, there's more quality, there's more like visual effects, there's more stuff done to it. That performs worse on TikTok than it does on Instagram. And the reason for that is people are usually more accustomed to TikTok being more like grassroots and more just someone talking about their day, just more like authentic, right? Instagram can be a little more polished and more production value into it. So when you're also looking at UGC, you have to understand there's different types of UGC for platforms, and you have to understand what is going to resonate the most with your audience. So I want to tackle misconceptions about UGC. There's a bunch of misconceptions that I see, but one of the biggest ones that I see with consumer app founders that I'm advising or come over to our house for events is UGC should be the primary growth tool of your app. That just isn't the case. So more often than not, UGC is a way, like a testing ground to see what hooks work organically, how your like your ICP, your target audience is going to react, what emotions you can invoke in them. It's really just a testing ground that is very cheap compared to paid ads to figure out what works and what resonates with your audience. What ends up happening is over time, you want to take those pieces of UGC content and run paid ads on them. And that is actually where a majority of your growth is going to come from. I also hear that UGC should be your only growth plan. That is also just false, right? Like it could be a very good one if you find some virality, which like some companies do, or if you have like an army of creators posting UGC content, that could work. But that should never be your only option, right? At least it should not be your only plan. If things work out, great, and you can just kind of push with that. But from the get go, from the start, you should be thinking, okay, I have to do UGC for a while. Maybe I'm going to do that in parallel with paid ads eventually. You're going to have to play around with that. I also hear UGC is dirt cheap. So there's different classes of UGC. There's UGC, which are very polished videos, and those are very expensive. You're talking about like $200-300 per video, and they're great. They're great pieces of content, but it's probably not what you want. It's going to be very expensive and it's going to cost you a ton of money over time, right? Like that's probably not what you're going for. The next class below is where you have the creator that's coming up with the hooks, coming up with things, maybe posting the videos on another TikTok account that they manage themselves. You don't manage, they manage. That is like $30 per video. That's probably the sweet spot of where you want to be. There is UGC that is very cheap. This is UGC that you will find on some like platforms. If you search like UGC creators for hire or something like that, these creators tend to be like university students, college students that just want like a little bit of side money. These creators can be incredibly cheap. Like you're talking about like $10 a video, $5 a video, maybe like super cheap. But they're not going to do any creative work. They're not going to be managing their own TikTok accounts. They're basically just going to get a script, film exactly what the script says, and send you the content, which could work. But there's a lot of overhead with now you have to write the scripts, and you have to manage the content, you have to warm up all the TikTok accounts, you have to have multiple TikTok accounts, whatever. A lot of overhead. Those creators are also the least reliable. So if you are looking for a creator to consistently post for a month, which is usually what I recommend, these are not the creators to look for. These creators you're going to be chasing. It's going to be very difficult to get anything out of them. It's going to be a pain in the ass. So that like $20 bump per video actually gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility and is super worth it. The last misconception that I hear a lot is that UGC can be used for basically anything. And the truth is that UGC performs best for certain things, for certain products. So mobile apps, it performs very, very well because the friction to go from something like TikTok where they would see the UGC content to downloading the app and onboarding onto the app is very low, right? Like they click a link goes to App Store, they hit download, now they're in your onboarding. Done. E-commerce is much of the same. Could be a little more complicated depending if you have to like redirect them somewhere or you just use like TikTok Shop or something, but they see your UGC, they click buy, they click on a link, whatever, they go to a website and they can make the purchase. When you start talking about other products where there's like some physical, like it's a physical product they have to interact with in order to get it properly, or there's like a desktop app that they have to download or something. Now you're introducing so much friction that UGC is not going to be your best performer, most likely. There's a small chance, but most likely it's not going to be the best performer for you. So UGC definitely is not like a blanket one size fits all. You have to really make sure that UGC fits the product that you're trying to sell. So to summarize, where UGC really helps is UGC helps you organically figure out what type of content resonates with your audience. That is massive. That's going to save you a bunch of money with meta ads. It's also going to tell you, does your product actually resonate with your ICP, with your target audience? Is there a marketplace for what you are making, right? It's also going to tell you if that market is saturated. So if you're building like a calorie tracker app, it's probably been done a lot, right? And I think you'll very quickly figure that out with UGC because you're spending a bunch of money and you're not getting great returns. And that bunch of money is significantly less than you'd be paying to Meta to be advertising to have the same result, right? So it's kind of like a testing ground for that as well. UGC really tells you that mobile apps is the main juice. So you want to make money with UGC, you want to use UGC to market your product. Mobile apps is the route that works best for that. Through the process of doing UGC, if you are very involved in the creative process, which you should be, you will learn a lot about your ICP. You'll probably learn things that you weren't expecting. But the most important thing for you to learn is the emotions that your ICP needs invoked in order for them to convert to installing your app, to paying for your app, whatever. So having that understanding and being able to experiment across a bunch of different products, a bunch of different creators on TikTok opens up the gates for you to understand your ICP to a level that like otherwise you wouldn't have been able to do, right? Like if you're doing just meta ads, it's essentially a black box. You spend money, you throw money at meta, and then you maybe get money back through your app, but all you see is the in stream of people coming from Meta or TikTok or whatever, the ad network, right? You just see an in stream from that. You don't actually get information about like, did they comment on it? Did they watch it for a long time? Who was it? What was their gender? What was their age? You don't really get that information, right? So having TikTok and having TikTok analytics and being able to like throw up a divisive thing that you think will piss off people in your ICP and then seeing them actually comment, that gives you a lot of immediate feedback that you are just not going to get through an ad network. So let's talk about finding UGC creators because here we are, we're yapping about UGC, but I mean the elephant in the room is how do you get started, right? Like how do you find a UGC creator? So the methods that I have found that work most effectively is you want to look for hashtag UGC creator or hashtag UGC creators on like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Like those are going to be your three main things. Um, you have to note that the people that come up on TikTok and Instagram when you do hashtag UGC creator, hashtag UGC creators are going to be more of that polished product that is going to cost you a lot more per video. So they're going to be expecting like $200 per video. And I mean, they earned it, right? Like they have been doing UGC for a long time. And if they are popping up at the top of that list, they probably already have a bunch of brand deals and they kind of already see where they fit into that marketplace, right? When you go over to Twitter and you do hashtag UGC creator, hashtag UGC creators, you're gonna have all the people that are just getting started in their career. They could be very good, they just don't have brand deals yet. That is gonna be kind of your target for most products and for most budgets, right? Like it's kind of the people just getting started. You get to build up with them, you get to help them with their portfolio, and they're not gonna charge you an arm and a leg for it. There are other platforms, like I said, that target like university students, college students, and say, "Hey, do you want to make a couple extra bucks? All you got to do is like read this script to the camera, just like a TikTok." Those can work, but obviously, like I said, there's a lot more overhead with that, and they're a lot less reliable. And I would generally stay away from that until you're comfortable with the concept of managing UGC creators and working with UGC creators over time. A very important thing you have to know is it is very easy to be ripped off with UGC creators. And what I mean by that is you will talk to a UGC creator, and if you didn't watch this video, if you just try to enter it without like this warning I'm about to give you, they're gonna come at you and they're gonna quote you like, "Hey, I want $300 per video," and if you don't know any better, you might think that's going rate, especially if you do hashtag UGC creator, UGC creators on like TikTok, and you watch a couple of those videos, and those creators talk about the amount that they charge your head will spin. Like that is what they talk about, like charging 200 bucks. So a lot of these creators have it in their mind that they have to be charging that much money. Reality is you can negotiate them down. I remember there was this one creator that I spoke to on Twitter. He quoted me $10,000 for a month. I said, "Bro, I'm gonna pay you $30 for per video. I want one video a day, 900 bucks." And he was like, "No, I'm not gonna do it." I said, "Okay, I'm good then. I'm gonna walk." And he texted me like 20 minutes later. He was like, "Actually, 1,000 bucks sounds good." Done like that. So it's very easy to be ripped off, but you just have to know kind of the game, right? You have to know how it works and what they're being told, the information they're being fed, where it's like, "Hey, you should be charging 200 bucks per video." It's inaccurate. You need to know that, and you need to be comfortable with walking away from a lot of these people, even if they might be great. If you don't have the budget for it, you got to walk away from it. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're negotiating with these creators. The last thing is what to look for in a portfolio. So all these creators are going to send you portfolios, and it's going to be like Canva links. It's going to be like Google Drive folders. It's going to be like random shit. You have to really look at what the portfolio is and you have to decide what actually matters. So when I'm looking at portfolios, what I would like to see is that they have done content before and the content felt natural. Beyond that, I don't really give a fuck if it performed exceedingly well, if it didn't perform very well, if the person matches the ICP that I'm targeting. So if the creator matches the ICP, if I'm targeting 18 to 25 year olds, they look 18 to 25. If the videos they make don't sound like they're reading directly off of a script, if they show that there's a little creativity in when they make the videos, that is all like those are positive indicators. And I'm willing to at least trial that creator, right? Maybe I won't go the full length with them, but at least I can trial them. Because what I've found works best for creators is hire fast, fire fast, right? So check them out very briefly, hire them, watch how they perform the first three videos, give them a little bit of feedback. If the next two videos are flopped, fire them. You know what I mean? Don't waste your money, get rid of them. So now I want to talk about the cost of UGC. So obviously UGC is not free, and UGC is very complicated. So I have been talking about, paying per video. That is not the most common way that you do it. So a lot of creators like to get paid on retainer. Sometimes the retainer is paid half up front and half at the end after delivery. Sometimes creators like to get paid on a CPM basis. So how many views they generate is directly correlated to how much money they make. And sometimes there's even like brackets or bonuses. So if they get 100,000 to 500,000 views, they get paid an extra bit, or they get paid this rate. Or 500,000 to a million, they get paid this rate, or it's a bonus attached to their fixed rate, whatever. There's a lot of complications. You have to decide what makes the most sense for you. In general, what we have done, me personally, is we do fixed rate retainer. So we'll do retainer paid half up front, half at the end of the month. When you were just getting to know a creator, that I think is a very okay option where everyone feels comfortable. You might be paying a little bit more than if it was just CPM, but you're still trialing this creator, right? You're also not going to have these like random spikes where if this creator performs super well, now all of a sudden you're out $1,000 for a video, right? So it kind of just keeps everything very even keel. But over time, after you've been working with a creator, you might want to adjust and start switching. And you might find that you have better results paying like a CPM basis. Because now all of a sudden the creator is more enticed to like try to do something that stands out and will capture a lot of viewers, which is going to be better for your product, but you're going to pay for it, right? So I would say in the beginning, try to do pay per video or like a retainer, either fixed up front or whatever, some retainer, and then leave CPM for later after you have developed a relationship or you have more of a budget to spend on that. So now I want to talk about how to use UGC effectively. So there's been a lot of misconceptions. We went over them with UGC. So I see UGC get misused all the time. So really the way you're supposed to be using UGC is you're supposed to have multiple accounts, not run by you. This is ideally ran by the creators that you're paying for in whatever market you are trying to target. So if they are Americans that you are trying to sell your product to, your creators should be American, their phones should be in America, and the accounts are tied to that phone, which is in America, right? That is the best way you're going to target these creators. And following that kind of path, you want like maybe 6 creators or something at a time. And each of those 6 have their own fresh accounts that they start from scratch. They warm up appropriately. So there's a whole warm up period with like 6 or 7 days where you're like having to search stuff up. You can search that up, figure out how to do that. But they have to be warmed up. And then every single day you post on it, and the account has to be warmed up every single day before you post, a whole bunch of stuff like that. But those creators generally should be posting every single day for a month. So what you end up having at the end of the month is 180 pieces of content if you have 6 creators going at the same time. That allows you to run at least 180 different experiments, right? You're able to actually see, okay, I can experiment with this hook, I can experiment with this structure of the video, and you can change it multiple times. You can maybe even target different sects within inside of your ICP, right? Like your target audience. Gives you a lot of flexibility to actually see what invokes emotion inside of your target audience and how you can appeal to them. You need to understand what content performs best on a platform. So if you are, doing UGC for Twitter, which I mean could happen, probably like text is going to do a little bit better than video sometimes. Maybe video would do a little bit better because it stands. So you have to really understand what works, and you have to stay on top of it, and you have to inform your creators on what they should be doing, right? So not necessarily writing it for them, but giving them direction so they understand what they should be doing generally. They can still come up with the hooks. They can do the creative part. That's why they're creators, right? But you want to give them some direction of what you're expecting. Then finally, I think in order to do UGC effectively, you have to be willing to fire people. So some creators are just not going to perform. And sometimes it's completely out of their control, your control. It just, their face doesn't resonate with the target audience for some reason. Who knows? It happens, right? Their personality, just something weird about them that, like, if you just saw them on the street, you would not even notice. But for some reason, TikTok, your target audience, it comes out for some reason. In that case, you just have to kind of fire them and move on with it, right? Like you cannot be afraid to do that. It's your money, it's your marketing. You just have to push. So let's talk about what to do if your UGC actually performs well, because that's going to happen, right? You do it enough, it's bound to happen. So the first thing that I do is, let's say you have 180 pieces of content over the course of a month, 6 creators. Out of those 180 pieces of content, you want to take the top percentage of them. So I would pick like 10 videos out of 180. Those top 10 performing out of the 180, you then want to open a meta ads campaign, run paid ads on it, and see how they perform. There's a whole bunch of, I talk about this in other videos, but there's a whole like feedback loop you need to give Meta or TikTok so that they understand how to optimize the ad campaign. But in theory, if that UGC content performed organically well, like the hooks performed well, invoked the right emotions. When you go and you put it into a spend campaign where you're actually putting money into it, it should perform really, really well, right? Because you kind of already tested what emotions get invoked, what hooks work. Now you are just taking what already worked and you're supercharging it with meta ad spend and just throwing it everywhere. At that point, you can decide just to continue doing UGC if it makes sense. There's more opportunity for you to run more experiments, but you can also just pause and stop, right? Because UGC is one of those things that you can turn on and off. So you can run it for a little bit, get your winners, put in meta ads, see how it does in meta ads, and then go back if you have to, or start it in parallel if that starts making sense. You have a lot more flexibility at that point, right? But UGC is one of those things you could turn on and off. Meta ads, not so much. So once you start meta ads, you're kind of locked into that. You can obviously turn campaigns off that are not performing well, but in general, it's not things you could turn on and off super simply and still make money for. In the case that your content does well, you need to know that your creators are going to want to get paid more. They're going to want to change the agreement, the contract once it's over. They might want to get paid CPM basis. You have to just understand that that is going to happen, and it's up to you how you want to navigate that, right? Like, do you actually did the creator perform so well that you actually wanted to keep them on board? In that case, I mean, do that, right? Other cases, the creator is asking, but they didn't perform that great. You already have the content. You kind of just you roll with it at that point, right? So, kind of up to you to decide how to do it. But at the end of the contract, if a creator performed well, just expect the contract to change, and you're gonna have to let them go because that is just a thing that happens all the time. So, what should you do if your UGC content doesn't perform well? So, the first thing you got to do is you have to ask yourself, okay, was the UGC actually good, right? Were the creators actually performing well? Did the UGC content feel like it was paid marketing? Was there like that feeling of sponsorship or like they're just reading off of a script? Because all those things will turn someone off from your product, right? So if your UGC didn't perform properly, I would first start at that, right? Like kind of you're working down the chain, start at the first thing. Was the UGC just crap? The next thing I would ask is, do you actually understand your ICP properly? So whatever you're doing, is your ICP having some emotion invoked? Is it resonating with your ICP? Are you missing it? Like, are you targeting the wrong age group for some reason? Something like that. So you have to really analyze that. So one of the ways you could do that is, look at your TikTok analytics and see who is actually watching your videos and see if you are targeting them properly over time or if you were kind of missing that step. And then probably the biggest last question you can ask in this case, before you get into more meta stuff is, okay, are you actually understanding the emotion that you have to invoke in your ICP? Sometimes you might think you do, and you are just totally missing what works best. So you have to really analyze, okay, what does your product do? How will your users actually use that? And then how can you invoke emotion to bridge that gap, right? Is the emotion that you are trying to invoke in your content actually hitting the mark with that, or are you totally missing it? Then finally, getting into the meta part, this is where it starts getting more. You have to analyze your product. Does your product suck, right? Like if your UGC does not work, does your product just suck? That is possible. And if that's the case, that's fine. Like you've been through the hard stuff, right? Like you hired UGC creators, you tried, like that is all very difficult. Now you are building this like growth engine that you will now know how to use in the future. But if your product sucks, that's not a great fit for it, right? Just pivot your product. The hard part is the distribution. The product is not hard. So swap out the product. Don't feel bad about it. Try something else. Just use your growth engine now for something else. One of the other things that will come up a lot with UGC, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is when you have UGC, there's a lot of overhead managing them and dealing with contracts and making sure they post every single day and all that. So it's very tempting to hire an agency. And I think there's a time and a place to hire an agency. I think agencies make sense when you're already making money. You've been through it already a little bit yourself, because I think there's a lot of lessons you learn in managing creators, in managing the creatives that go out. So whatever emotions you're trying to invoke, how are you doing it? How are you structuring the video? How are you structuring your hook? What are your hooks? How do you hit the beats properly? There's a lot that you can learn from there and apply to other aspects of your business, right? But you get to a certain point where you want to just start working with an agency. So first thing you have to know is some agencies can be very expensive. The ones that are cheap are probably not worth working with. The ones that are expensive will usually roll in the cost of the creators into it. That is fantastic. That is like a really great agency. Just know you're paying overhead, right? And you expect that. That's how it works. Agencies, you're going to be spending the money and you're not necessarily going to get the ROI immediately. You might not necessarily get it at all, right? That's okay as well, right? Because like it's all part of the plan. You're just figuring out a way to test things so you can put into paid ads and see where things are going to go from there, right? So you need to understand that when it comes to agencies, there's that overhead, the ROI might not immediately be there. And kind of just like capping it all off and just really reiterating this point, agencies will simplify a lot for you, but they'll abstract a lot from you. So they'll simplify, you're able to go work on the product or whatever you have to do. That's fantastic. But they abstract so much from you that you are hidden away from a lot of the emotional aspects that drive consumer purchasing patterns, right? And if you do that, all of a sudden now you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot where you are not really getting the pulse of your ICP, and that can be detrimental to your product. Another thing that UGC creators will try to charge you for, which is bullshit, is rights, usage rights. Um, if you speak to a creator that wants to charge you usage rights, they are either one of those super polished ones that are accustomed to doing that already for brands, or they are just emulating what they think is expected of them. That is not an expectation. You should not be entertaining that really. Like $30 per video, you should have usage rights and that's it. You should be pretty steadfast on that and hard set on just getting that. So that's basically a full rundown of how UGC works, how it effectively works, and how you can try to use it for your own product. Obviously, if there's any questions or anything, just leave a comment or something and we'll get back to you. And yeah, best of luck using UGC for your content.